Aloha everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about the Pixel 6 Pro, specifically living with it, using it as a daily driver for over 3 weeks. The experience that I'm sharing with you guys today is something that you should be able to look for in case you're considering getting the Pixel 6 Pro, or if you already purchased the 6 Pro or even the 6. This is a brand new endeavor from Google. Although we've had Pixels and Nexus devices for some years, this is the first time Google's controlling not only the experience on the device, but also the processing power with the brand new Tensor chipset that we have in here. This is a different approach. Again, when we look at the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro, we really need to see the vision that Google's trying to drive for us. This is TK. Let's go ahead and talk about living with the Pixel 6 Pro for the last 3 weeks. Like and subscribe, and make sure you hit that bell icon so that you're always notified whenever we have new videos on the channel. So this is the package that I have for the brand new Pixel 6 Pro. I have the black one. We did get a case from Google. I did end up picking up the charger. This is a 30-watt charger that Google sells on their site. But the packaging itself is actually pretty simple. The box, Pixel 6 Pro. There's a few colors available, different storage capabilities or capacities. Google on the side, Google on the side, Pixel 6 Pro here. And as far as the actual content of the box, it's pretty straightforward. We get the cable, basically USB-C, USB-C cable. We also have an OTG adapter to be able to transfer our data from our old device. Very standard, very simple, no charger in the box. This is going to be extra. But the main thing that I wanted to share with you guys here, obviously, regardless of the fact that this is a first-party case, looks really nice. There's different color options and availability directly from their site. The main difference here is that this is a new direction for Google, and I'll say this over and over in this video because, again, Google's not only controlling the software on this device, they're also controlling the actual experience, the processing power. They can actually improve different things with an OTA update now that was different in the past, where Qualcomm was the primary chipset in most of their devices. They did release Qualcomm chipsets devices like the Pixel 5a, and that was still running a Qualcomm 765G, but that's one thing to mention. The higher end models, the Tensor models, are the Pixel 6 and Pixel 6 Pro. So to start off, we're going to talk about the specifications and the differences, and I know you probably already know a lot of it, so I'm not going to really go too much into detail, but the main thing is the 6 and 6 Pro are featuring the Tensor processor, and both are also featuring the Titan M2 processor, the updated version of the Titan security chip. The Pixel 6 will have an 8128 and up to 256 gigs of internal storage with an only 8 gigabytes of RAM basically capacity. The 6 Pro, which is what we have here, will have a 12128, a 12512, and a 12256 model, depending on the color you want to pick up. But the big difference between the two here essentially is that also the difference in size. We're looking at a 6.7-inch display here, QHD at 120 Hz on the Pixel 6 Pro. The Pixel 6 will have a 6.4-inch 90 Hz Full HD resolution, so slightly different. Also, the Pixel 6 will have a flat display, where the Pixel 6 Pro definitely has curvature that matches the front and the back for symmetry. The battery capacity on the 6 Pro is going to be at 5000 milliampere, where the Pixel 6 Pro, well, the Pixel 6 will have a 4600 milliampere. One thing, this is a little bit of a caveat. I know at the beginning or at the launch event, Google talked, or at least or on their website, also shows a 30-watt charger. So we're saying that this device is supported by the 30-watt charger. That is a true statement if you consider the fact that it actually, will be charged by this power delivery 30-watt charger, but it actually does not charge at 30 watts. So that's something to keep in mind. The 5000 milliampere battery will probably take you about an hour and 40 minutes from 0 to 100%. Although we're going to talk about the battery life, it may not necessarily be that long charging it on the daily if you're just charging it off at the end of the day. So it's something to keep in mind when it comes to usability. The Pixel 6, similar experience, again, charges with the 30-watt charger, but does not charge at 30 watts, and again, has a 4600 milliampere battery. The difference between the two is because of the size difference from 6.4 to 6.7, and also the power demand, QHD at 120 Hz, where the other one is a Full HD at 90 Hz. Different capabilities with different power draw, so definitely the 4600 is paired correctly with the right device. Now, the camera stack that we have here on the back is also a little bit different. The Pixel 6 Pro has an additional telephoto lens here that we don't have on the Pixel 6. It's a 48 megapixel telephoto lens. The primary shooter is still the 50 megapixel GN1 sensor. We still have a 12 megapixel ultra wide, and that's going to marry over to the Pixel 6. So the biggest difference when it comes to cameras, at least on the back, it's the telephoto lens, up to 48 megapixels. The front-facing camera that we have here is also a little bit different. This one is actually at 11.1 megapixel, capable of shooting 4K 30 frames per second. Definitely a much better improvement over what we get also with the Pixel 6, which is an 8 megapixel, still capable of shooting 1080p. Both of them will have IP68. Both of them are running Android 12 out of the box, and this is going to be something that you want to be very familiar. This is the new Material U approach to Android, and at least what Google's trying to give us as far as an experience. Lastly, I do want to mention both will be receiving up to 5 years of security patch updates and 3 years of, or 3 versions of Android update. Since they were released with 12, so 13, 14, and 15 will be released on the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro. Definitely a different approach again from Google when it comes down to their devices. Briefly, I do want to mention you don't necessarily have to pick up the charger that comes from Google. This is a power delivery charger at 30 watts. So the main thing that I would probably say is this device will charge up to 50% in 30 minutes. The difference where it happens there essentially is the experience of where the charging capability kind of just drops down to a very smaller, more trickle charge experience. Google's focusing on battery life and extending the battery life on a smartphone like this to last you up to 5 years. The other thing that you can also do, which is really nice, is if you have an alarm set on your timer, so you use the phone for an alarm and you have it set, let's say, to wake you up at 7 a.m., but you plug the phone overnight. The phone will not charge at the fastest speed to have it fully charged and sitting at 100% throughout the night. It actually slow charges itself, ending at the 7, whatever, if the 7 a.m. was the timing, it'll end at that point and gives you the ability of charging it and not allowing the phone to sit at 100%, which again could damage the battery long term. So there are some measurements done here to help you get a better battery life and longer battery life as you're using your device. Now, as I mentioned to you guys at the beginning, this is running a 6.7-inch QHD 120 Hz refresh rate. Let's go ahead and dock this one to the left. I did not install a custom launcher yet. I'm still using the Google launcher, and this is basically just standard. We have the Google Feed sitting here on the left. We have the ability of adding applications, different options. If we press and hold, we have the ability of adding new widgets, and those are the new options. So here, useful find with the fingerprint. So we'll go ahead and click OK. But if we go into, let's say, clocks or different options in here, you'll see the new Material U implementation in here. Also, the theming engine is powerful here, and it is present. And you're able to basically customize and change the theme based on the wallpaper, as well as have it actually apply to the icons, which is in beta right now. Changing the grid, changing the color palette, it permeates, and you have the big buttons that are present right there. You can see we're running Android 12. And of course, if we jump into settings, we have pretty much the new aesthetics. I did decide to go with the dark UI, and this is why you see it much darker. And again, keep in mind there are additional options here for security. The ability of turning on microphone, camera, this is all Android 12. We covered that in the gaming video that we posted not that long ago. The reason why I wanted to actually kind of cover some of this, and you can see I also have my Tesla connected. I installed the Tesla app, obviously. And the biggest thing about the display here is that it's a beautiful display. Some people are talking about some color shifting on the edge and so on. The camera placement should have been on the top left as opposed to the top center. The reality of the matter is, honestly, using this device is not going to be a disappointing experience. And what I mean by this is the ability of being able to actually enjoy content on this. You can actually zoom in, punch it in, and you see here that the camera is actually present on the far left. Most of the content which is centered in the middle, you're definitely going to be able to enjoy. And the ability of going into higher resolution will also help us get a better experience when it comes down to content consumption. Now, we don't have a headphone jack. As far as the specifications, again, we have basically just one microphone sitting at the top. We have an additional microphone sitting right there, a bottom microphone with the bottom firing speaker positioned at the bottom. A single SIM card with an eSIM support, USB-C as far as the connectivity, bottom firing speaker. On the right side, we have basically a volume rocker, power button. On the left side, we pretty much have a clean slate with the exception of the SIM tray. So the SIM tray sits right there. Hopefully you guys can see it. You can pop it out and take it. And again, if you want to use it with an eSIM, you're more than welcome to do that. So in a way, it is a dual SIM device, although one has to be an eSIM. Now, when it comes down to the fingerprint sensor, I will say this much. A lot of people have commented on this saying that the fingerprint sensor is not as fast as some of the other devices on the market. My question to you is this: is it fast enough for what you need to do? Meaning, if I need to unlock my device and use it, is it fast enough for what I need to do? Absolutely. Does it have any problems? No. Is it slower slightly than some of the other options? Yeah, I mean, if you're comparing speed, obviously there's going to be different speeds between different devices. If we jump onto the display and we jump all the way down to increased touch sensitivity, that will help the experience a little bit if you're having problems with it. But personally, I really don't see it as an issue at all. My thing would be is as long as you know what you're doing and basically put your finger where it needs to be, there hasn't been an issue for me. Some people are also recommending registering the same thumb multiple times. That could also help the experience. I have not had that issue at all. Now, as far as Android 12 and compatibility, I know there's been questions or some issues with people talking about app compatibility. Some apps are crashing, still not working. And I'll say this, to this day, the game Thumper, I'm trying to use it here and I'll install it, I launch it. And the moment I try to play the game, it launches this boot menu. I'll give it a second. You'll notice right there, it logged me into my account and it crashes. That's something that I have not seen an update from the developer of the game to address this yet. It doesn't mean that this game doesn't work. I know it works on other devices. It's an Android 12, not a Pixel 6 issue. You have to keep that in mind. Some of the other comments that we've seen on this device is the fact that there are, people talking about the battery life being bad. I have not had a situation from the day I've received it since the setup time. And you need to caveat this. When you're setting up a smartphone, there's a very different timing or battery usage that you cannot really compare to other times, because you're doing things that normally don't happen on this device, meaning install a mass quantity of applications, updating a mass quantity of applications, transferring data from one device to the other. The modems are engaged. There's a whole bunch of things running in the background. So the first couple of days I discounted, but consistently since then, I've been receiving 7+ hours of screen on time. And that's something to be enjoyed on a device that is basically packed with a 5,000 milliampere battery. I do have the high refresh rate turned on. So this is one thing I know a lot of people will wonder. Do I have the high refresh rate turned on, and is this benefiting or impacting the usage? So smooth display, 60 to 120 Hertz. It is an automatic option, so it does not stay at 120 all the time. Increased touch sensitivity, again, I turned that on. We have the night light turned on, or the night theme turned on. Dark theme is turned on right there. Screen timeout, I have it set after 5 minutes. So again, I'm not setting it to be something that will basically turn off right away. Brightness level is set to 65. As you can see, about 85%. I am on Wi-Fi right now in the studio, but I'm able to pick up 5G as well as, which is a little bit controversial, but again, 5GE on AT&T, depending on the market that you're in. Now, as far as speed test, you're not going to be disappointed. Depending on where you are, you're able to even tap into the ultra capacity on T-Mobile. And this is actually a very good connection. This is some of the new bands that we got incorporated into the T-Mobile network from the Sprint merger. So connection, not going to be a problem. Depending on where you are in the world. If you're thinking about importing this device to a market where it's not supported, that's one thing to keep in mind. Wi-Fi calling as well as 5G may and may not work in your area, so you need to be aware of that. 4G may also work depending on the bands that your carrier supports, so make sure that you pick up the device for the market that you're in. Google has not released this device in every single market and has not configured it to work in every market. And unfortunately, right now, without them supporting it specifically in that market, it's not going to be running at the full capacity that you're expecting. So it's something to keep in mind. Jumping into the camera, we have a few options in here. We have portrait mode, as you'd imagine, motion, and of course night sight. Now night sight is focused primarily on the main sensor. You'll notice it changes it right there, especially when it turns on the star option, because it's thinking right now that I'm actually shooting in the night or in the star, so it's focusing on that. But if I open it up a little bit, you'll notice that all the lenses will be able to use. We'll be able to use all the lenses with night sight. Under other modes, we have panorama, photosphere, and of course lens. Video mode gives us the ability of shooting up to 4K 60 frames per second on the primary sensor and 4K 30 frames per second across the other sensors, including the front-facing sensor. So if I went ahead and switch over to the front-facing sensor, now we have the ability of actually picking 4K as opposed to just a full HD ability. Speech enhancement is optionally in there, as well as selfie illumination. Those are a couple of options in there. There's a few other optimizations. Time-lapse, of course, as well as the ability of jumping in a little bit closer with somewhat of a crop on the sensor. But when we jump over here, we have access to the flash, the 4K, the 30 frames, 60 frames per second. And of course, we can jump into more setting, gesture control, functionality, camera resolution, all of the different options that you want to do that. And I'll be saying this much, the camera experience on this is absolutely fantastic. Video has also improved so much from some of the other devices that we've seen in the past. 4K 60 on the back is definitely the best that you're going to be able to shoot, so there's no 8K. But honestly, 8K in the current form that it's in, I don't think it's any medium that a lot of us are jumping into shooting. Even 4K 60 is not necessarily the average usage for 4K. Most people shoot at 4K 30. And I recommend keeping it, if you want to shoot front-facing and back-facing camera experiences, you want to keep the video frame rate the same, shoot at 4K 30 from the back and at 4K 30 from the front. You'll be able to access all of the lenses, the ultra-wide, the standard, again, the telephoto as well, and of course, the front-facing 11.1 megapixel sensor. The Pixel 6 and the Pixel 6 Pro are a new direction, a new experience that is tailored by Google. The pricing is definitely very much targeted to be an undercutting experience, $599 and $899 starting off. Again, with the 6 Pro is $899. It's actually a really decent experience. You're getting 12 gigs of RAM with the 128 gigs of internal storage, and as well as the ability of basically being able to select other options if you want to, topping off obviously at about $1,100 with the 512 gigs version of the 6 Pro. So that's the best of the best. Still much cheaper than a Samsung or even an iPhone at that price point with that type of storage. Now, will I say that Tensor is the best processor on the market? No. Is it the best processor for a Pixel? Yes. And that's what we really need to look at it. I don't think we should be comparing a processor on how it performs, comparing it to something else. Because at the end of the day, if you do that in real life, you'll never buy a car, right? We always go into the dealership and knowing that our car is not as fast as the Lamborghini. It's not as fast as, and I'm not trying to say that, an A15 is that much better. But the A15 needs to be measured on how it performs on iOS, on an iPhone. It shouldn't be compared to a device that is not running it. Because look at the experience that you're trying to say. Will you ever see an A15 running on a Samsung? No. Then why are we taking a Samsung smartphone and comparing it as a performance, saying that the A15 gets a higher Geekbench score? The Geekbench scores are there for reference, and I think it's a good point to use. A buddy of mine, Juan Carlos, mentioned it, that actually use it to see how your device ages. Don't use it to make a decision based on that your device is worthy or not worthy. The device runs smooth. The 120 frames per second is absolutely amazing. Large display, QHD resolution, and definitely an immersive experience. The speakers on this is actually pretty good. You are able to connect a USB-C pair of headphones in this, or even Bluetooth. That was the other surprise that I liked here, is it actually supports a very nice wide range of Bluetooth codec, which was actually better than my S21 Ultra, which came to at least LDAC. I wasn't able to get the highest quality of 3296 kilohertz. That's something that was interesting for me. Like, for some reason, Samsung's experience has been limited. I'm hoping Android 12 may change that experience, but at this point, I'm enjoying the Pixel 6 Pro, and I really, really like it. Has it lived up to the same expectations of my Pixel 4 XL experience from a few years ago, where I literally had the hardest time removing my SIM card out of it? Time will tell. I'm not at that point yet, but I'm not ready to remove my SIM card from it. I'm enjoying using it regardless if it's on AT&T, on T-Mobile, and again, the ultra capacity on T-Mobile in my area is absolutely crazy fast, and that's something that I really enjoyed using on the Pixel 6 Pro. The fast connectivity and the integration into the Google services in a very deep level. So Android 12, the theming works great, although, quick tip, I would probably recommend you not having it automatically changing your wallpaper, especially when you're gaming, because it does have a little bit of a hiccup as it's trying to run that process in the background as you're trying to actually run the system to its full potential. Gaming on this is actually pretty decent. There still needs to be a few updates to take advantage of the 120 Hz refresh rate, and I feel like that's more on the developers than the device. So again, you really need to be able to see what the Pixel 6 is and the 6 Pro, and what Android 12 is, and also what you're getting when it comes down to developers. Thumper, it has nothing to do with the Pixel 6 if crashing. It's mostly Android 12 and more than likely the developer. Once that gets updated, the app should be able to run perfectly fine. Android Studio did actually have some problem here, or YouTube Studio, and that was fixed with an update. And again, these are little things that I don't feel like it's really making or breaking the experience. The overall experience on this, as you're looking with the images, are absolutely fantastic. Pictures from the front-facing camera, the back-facing camera look great. I was recently at a movie release here in Hollywood, hosted by one of our other companies, TCL, and I was trying to sit, we were sitting pretty far from the stage, and I'm sharing with you guys a couple of images of Benedict Cumberbatch and Kirsten Dunst sitting on stage, and we were literally all the way at the top in the back, and with the 48 megapixel telephoto lens, even though it was low light, we were still able to actually get some decent pictures, and you actually can tell who the people are in the pictures. And those are things that you want to actually start thinking about. What are the functionalities you want out of your Pixel? If you need that telephoto lens, obviously that will force you to go to Pixel 6 Pro. But if you don't, and you're more comfortable with more of a wide angle lens, the main tensor chipset, of course, 4K 30, 4K 60 frames per second on the GN1, which by the way, works absolutely great. Really good low light imagery, astrophotography, the ability of using the different camera modes that we have in here for stabilizations, and the fact that we can get 4K 30, at least on the 6 Pro, across most of the camera, or actually all of the cameras, and 4K 60 on the GN1 is very nice. So my experience with the 6 Pro for the last 3 weeks has been amazing. It definitely is not a perfect experience. There still needs to be some updates come through here. Android, as well as obviously developer support, and of course a little bit more optimizations for background processes, for battery drain. There are a little bit of concerns that did get better over time, but again, these are things that Google is known for. Pixel is known for updates. I love the fact that Google does not need to push an entire OTA to update the camera for me. Now they're basically breaking up certain elements to be able to go through the Google Play Store as opposed to an OTA. So while we were thinking, well, I have to wait an entire month for something to get fixed, no, they can technically push some updates through the Google Play Store. So that's a different approach than some of the other manufacturers. So would I recommend the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro? Absolutely. The price difference between the two are for specific features: larger display, higher refresh rate, the additional sensor on the back, and a better performing front-facing sensor. So if you are more focused into taking pictures and videos from the front-facing sensor and you want that better experience, I feel like even though it's not that massive of a difference, but going from an 8 megapixel sensor to an 11.1 does give us enough of a resolution to be able to get 4K 30 and better front-facing images. Although all of them are supported by Google's post-processing, which again, you're almost never going to be able to take a bad picture with a Pixel. It's literally hard. And I think that's the biggest drive here. Google's trying to make a device that is so intuitive, so involved into AI and machine learning, as well as the ability of knowing exactly how to expose an image for you, especially with that magic eraser functionality. It's literally crazy good. So you're not going to be disappointed with it if you're thinking about picking it up. Again, I recommend the Pixel 6, but if you want to get some of the best experiences, the 6 Pro will definitely deliver on that. Like and subscribe as usual. Thank you very much for the support, and I hope to see you in the next video.